Hey folks, hope you're all doing well and welcome to another Thursday show. Unfortunately, this episode you're just gonna have me and Martin. Pete unfortunately couldn't make it, and he sends his regrets. But we're gonna go ahead with Martin and myself. We're gonna keep it loose. I got a bit more time now, so I'll try to get into some of the comments as well as we go through this. So basically, what we've done is we've decided to pick. Wow, my screen is frozen. My computer just froze. Hopefully you can still hear me and everything's okay. Wow, my whole computer is frozen. Can you guys hear me okay? Let me know if you can hear me okay and you can see me okay. All right, looks like my screen is back. Let's check the comments. You can hear me and you can see me okay. Okay, yeah, my screen, everything just froze there for a second. So anyway, so what we've basically done is we've both picked 3 bands and kind of picked 5 songs from each band that kind of covered or encapsulated sort of the styles and the different types of music that they did within those genres. So to help me in that endeavor, yeah, Mr. Martin Popoff, how you doing, sir?
Yeah, doing okay. Looking forward to this. Yeah, it's an interesting concept, right? We've done this once before, and it's an odd one, right? By the way, I wanted to say, when you say your computer froze, when your music came on to come onto the show, it was coming in low res, right? You know, where the cymbals sound kind of trash canny. So I thought, oh, there's something going on here. So yeah. Anyways, it looks like we're fine now. So and I can hear you the whole time there. So
okay, perfect. Yeah, that was kind of a panicky moment. I thought I had to reboot, but everything's cool. So let me welcome some of the folks that have joined us here thus far. We've got NDR. Welcome. Nice to see you. Time Surfing Alien. How you doing? There's Mitch Heyman. How are you? Let's going down here. Tyler Patterson. Cretan Classics. Welcome. Okay, we got a few folks in here. We got 12 folks in here at the moment. All right. So like I said at the top, Pete couldn't join us this evening. He sends his regrets, but we're gonna march on anyways and get through this. So Martin's picked 3 bands. I've picked 3 bands. So I guess the best way to do it is just to kind of go back and forth. So,
sure.
So let's start with Martin. So what's your first band and what's their 5 songs that you feel?
Yes. So like I said, I mean, this is kind of a weird concept because I've always thought, you know, in this day and age, you know, when people say, what album would you recommend for me to get into a band, right? And you don't know whether are you supposed to tell them the one that sounds the most like in the middle, like that band, or the best album, which means it's all downhill after that, or you know, you gotta kind of gauge their age and stuff. So yeah, this is a similar kind of idea, but I guess what we're trying to do is sum up the whole career in 5 songs. It's almost like Cole's notes of that band, or like an EP that is like a career retrospective EP kind of thing, right? So my first band is Accept. And the first song I'm going to pick is, by the way, my Accept book. We're working on getting that back into print. So it's going to be coming out through my UK publisher with a new cover and title and expanded a little bit and all that. So that's coming up in a few months. But I went with the third album, because the first one's called Accept. The second one's called Accept, or I'm a Rebel. But this is the big, huge leap forward, the great improvement. This is a really, really cool album. You got the flying V's on the back, right? Looks awesome.
Yeah.
But I went with the song Breaker, which is the title track from Breaker. And I used it to represent just how professional they were in the early days. It's a beautiful recording. This whole album is just recorded rather well, and it's almost like the pre Fast as a Shark, Fast as a Shark. Fast as a Shark always gets all the accolades, but this is a speed metal classic in 1981 as well, or verging on thrash. So except they should be considered as part of the bands that helped invent thrash, and people always say that about Fast as a Shark. But I thought I'd go earlier with that. So that's my first one. My second track is from this album, Balls to the Wall, right? And I went with the title track again to represent the sort of hypnotic, slow, mid-pace headbang of the band. Plus, it's the song that people might recognize. So if you introduce somebody to this band and you played them that, and they might go, "Oh, I know that song."
Yeah, I know that song.
Most famous song. And I also picked it to represent that sort of like Soviet Russian backing vocal things that these guys do with the low
chant,
balls to the wall. Yeah, the chant, right? And the marching chant, right? The war chant, almost thing. So that's a good one for that. Then I went with I had to go with my favorite Accept song of all time, and I think it's their masterpiece. It's their Sails of Charon. It's their Stairway to Heaven. It's Metal Heart from Metal Heart, another title track. I didn't mean to do this. The last two aren't title tracks, but Metal Heart from this album. And I also picked it to represent the fact that they are European. Like they even got a song called Teutonic Terror, I think it's called. So they've got that Teutonic classical music sort of thing. And Metal Heart is probably their most classical music-y song, because it's even got a guitar solo in it that quotes a classical piece. I can't remember what it is, but actually let's see if it says here in the credits. It doesn't exactly, but yeah, it's definitely got that whole Rainbow, Judas Priest sort of classical Deep Purple feel. I think this is the best sounding album they did too. The production's amazing on this. So I think it's their best song, and it's also a pretty famous song. And then I went with you have to represent all the singers. So the Notorious Eat the Heat album. This is the one album with the American David Reese on it. It's one of the most hated albums of all time by anybody. And I played it again. So I went with Stand for What You Are. Stand for number 4, what you are. You are. So it's the stupidest title. It's not a good song. I wanted to pick something that warn people away from this album, because I played it again and it actually, I thought, oh, I bet it's better than I remember. No, it's not. It's not better than I remember. It's actually really bad. It's bad hair metal with this clattery, modern 80s production values. So no fault to David Reese. It's just Accept got dragged in that direction and they went for it. So that, and then finally I went with the song from Blood of the Nations. And I went with Rolling Thunder off of this album to represent kind of to represent the Mark Turnillo era, because they've got 5 albums or something from this era, high quality. But I also wanted to pick it to represent that upper mid-tempo sound that this band does a lot, where they really lock in. Again, Balls to the Wall is a bit like this too, but they lock into that simplified Judas Priest thing. I always love that thing that Dee Snider says. He says our concept was we were a cross between AC/DC and Judas Priest. And I feel like Accept is very close to a Judas Priest quite often, right? And it feels like the Judas Priest of British Steel, Point of Entry, Screaming for Vengeance style Judas Priest. And I think Rolling Thunder is perfect for that. So there you go. 5 songs, all 3 singers, and all eras basically represented through the long career. So there you go. Accept. It's my first choice.
Yeah. So just want to make a note. These are not our favorite. These are not our favorite songs. These are just the songs that we feel kind of encapsulates all the different things that they did. And like many, 80s metal bands, they lost their way for a while, and then they came back, and Blood of Nations is like an incredible record. So, but they all had their sidesteps, so to speak. But I just want to welcome William De Silva in Florida Heats. Thanks for joining us. Alrighty. Well, uh, I went a little bit Irish on my list because the first, and this is one of my, I mean, I did a video a long time ago, top 10 favorite guitar players, and this guy was right up there, and I'm talking about Gary Moore. So I picked 5 songs of Gary Moore that kind of, I think kind of fleshed out everything that he did. And I'm going to start with off of this record, Back on the Streets, his debut solo record. He did a song on here called Flight of the Snow Moose. And this is an example of his, because that first record is a little bit, there's some fusion on there, some rock fusion on there, and then then eventually just started doing like sort of 80s rock records. But there's a couple of tracks on there. Another one is Hurricane, where he's kind of doing that thing, and it just sort of shows his that phase of what he was doing. He also appeared on Coliseum 2, which is a straight rock and jazz uh jazz fusion endeavor, so it kind of shows that chops. I mean, and it kind of shows overall like that he was so versatile and he could play a number of different styles and things. And so that was my first pick. The second one is off of this record, Corridors of Power, which is a much beloved 80s Gary Moore album. And the song I'm picking off of this is an example of his 80s melodic pop, which everybody was playing heavy guitar, but they're playing very melodic songs at the time to get on the radio. And this song I'm talking about is Always Gonna Love You. Gary was a very pop oriented writer when he wanted to be, and tracks like this and Out of My System with Glenn Hughes, or Out in the Fields, or Run for Cover, which is off the Run for Cover album. He went through that sort of 80s melodic thing, in that period, like most bands did at that time, to again try to get the radio play. So that's my second pick. Third one I'm going to go with, and this is a cover off of Victims of the Future. And this is a cover. He did a cover of Shapes of Things. And my God, it is so heavy and so cool. And he's just absolutely shredding and playing his ass off. It's a complete shred fest. And that, again, was another layer to what he was capable of doing. I mean, there's another track on there called Murder in the Skies, where he's just like, it's like an Eddie Van Halen intro thing. Like he's doing his version of Eruption, and it's just absolutely fantastic. I mean, he could get pretty heavy and he could shred as well as anybody. He had so many layers to what he did. I mean, God rest his soul, right? The fourth one I'm going to pick is off the same record, Victims of the Future. And the song I'm going to pick is Empty Rooms. He was no stranger to doing a really good ballad, and that is a fantastic song. I mean, it's a ballad, but it's super melodic and just really pretty. I mean, songs like that. He did Parisian Walkways, with Phil Lynott, and then of course, the most famous one probably that he's known for is Still Got the Blues, off of the Still Got the Blues record. The guy just had, really could write really good ballad with really good melodic sense, just, fantastic. And then the last one, I mean, as we all know, he left the sort of heavy rock and he went into the blues.
Yeah.
And actually, this record was my introduction to Gary Moore, was Still Got the Blues. That's where I had to, kind of backtrack to his rock period. And it was just, I mean, just the way he played and the fight, like, I mean, it's blues, but it's so fiery and intense, I mean, that's one example, or one example is Oh Pretty Woman off of that record, but you could take any track off of that record. And then he went through a blues period for a number of years, and he did a Peter Green tribute record where he played even super more traditional, quiet, sort of in that genre. But when he was playing the aggressive blues, and there's all kinds of videos of him, on stage, and he would bring on like, Albert King, no, sorry, not Albert King, Albert Collins, and he'd bring on, BB King, and he would just absolutely shred and rip. But the thing with Gary, man, is like he would rip, but everything he did was so tasty and so in the moment and so intense. I mean, I could go on forever about Gary Moore, but that's a guy that you could really hear his personality through his playing, like his intensity and his passion, everything kind of came out through his playing. And it's why he's one of my favorite guitar players of all time. So, yeah, so he did the heavy rock thing. You could do the ballad thing. You could do the blues thing. You could shred. Like, you guy could do basically everything. So,
Sweet,
yeah,
nice,
those are my 5. Yeah,
I would have wanted to get you to go with something where he's working with Phil Lynott, like Military Man or something, right? Just to represent that Thin Lizzy link or something, right? Yeah, that's some
okay.
really cool stuff. Some of the last stuff he ever did, right? I think there were 2 songs, right? What is the other one called? Anyways, yeah, that's late. Like they worked together. He had so many big stars on his records too, eh? Lot of big, illustrious players on his albums.
Yeah. He even did in the 90s. He did kind of a 90s pop kind of, the pop of that time record. I can't think of the name of it. It's not a very good album, but he even tried to kind of get into that a little bit, get out of the blues and do that. And
the other one with Phil, I just remembered, is Out in the Fields, right?
Out in the Fields. I think I mentioned that one. Yeah. That's a great song too. I mean, melodic and, yeah, but we're gonna talk a little bit about that coming up though.
All right, cool. All right, so my second choice is Queen. You guys know I'm a big Queen fan. I've done 2 Queen books. They're both still available, album by album, and then this one live where we modeled it on the look of jazz. But I'm not going to have any jazz on here because I don't think it's that representative, even though it's probably my favorite Queen album. So I'm going to start with Modern Times Rock and Roll from the debut. Queen, and I went with that because I love this idea that Queen, they're one of these bands that and there's very few out there. I think they're the best example of this, where it's like when they wanted to do heavy metal, they could do it better than anybody else, but they did it so rarely. But they said, okay, now we're going to commit. We're going to go both feet in and do something just ferocious, right? And I think Modern Times Rock and Roll is funny like that. It's short. I like the idea. I also wanted to represent the great Roger Taylor singing as a vocalist. So, and then obviously we're going to the debut album. So that's my first choice. My second choice, I went with Killer Queen from this album. And Big Famous Song was a hit, their first hit, kind of a breakthrough song for them. I mean, the other stuff, it's almost a grayscale with them. The early stuff's kind of a hit even before that anyways, but this is considered a much bigger hit. And I went with it to represent, the studio trickery and that aspect of Queen where they do that weird 1920s music, dance hall music, or as Paul McCartney used to say, oh, we did that stuff on Beatles albums because it reminded us of music that our parents liked and grew up with. Kind of thing. So I like it for that reason. It's just got that weird thing that Queen does. And like I say, Queen does it, Beatles did it, and Wings did it as well. Kind of thing. But so there's Killer Queen, and it's a famous one, big famous song. And speaking of famous songs, I recently did a History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff audio podcast episode called The 5 Greatest Songs Ever Written. And at the very top of the list was Bohemian Rhapsody. I think objectively, rather than subjectively, you could say it's the greatest song ever written because it's got so much going on and all the parts are so memorable and so cool. Unlike Stairway to Heaven, where a lot of the parts are not that memorable or cool. It just has 4 parts and they're all boring. But this is all amazing parts. And the other cool thing about this song is that, we're making a 5-track EP to represent a band. You could just take that song and it's got enough going on that you've got all the bits of Queen in it. So it's like a microcosm of the band itself, right? It's a microcosm of the album and it's a microcosm of the band. So it's like a summary, just a quick, flip through the radio station version of here's everything Queen does all in one song. So I like that about it. Plus it's the greatest song ever written, right? And then I went with It's Late to represent this sort of period of Queen, which is kind of the, Day at the Races, News of the World, jazz era of Queen, I suppose. I mean, they're all fairly different from each other, but what I like about It's Late is, to me, it's like a Fat Bottom Girls, where it represents that part of Queen that's more like, and a Hammer to Fall. It's the hard rockin' Queen, but not the tricky intellectual heavy metal hard rockin' Queen. It's more the Rolling Stones chords, the big stacked chords, the jamming, the looseness. So that kind of heavy part of Queen. And It's Late is one of my top 5 favorite Queen
It's a
songs.
great song, yeah.
And so, yeah, so it's like that. It also has the big vocals and all that stuff
Oh
in it
yeah,
as
the
well.
big operatic vocals.
Yeah, so it's the big, loose, greasy, rocking out stadium rock Queen, and quite hard rocking at the same time. And then finally, I went with a notorious later song to represent all those crappy later albums. Invisible Man from this one, which basically sounds like, I was going to go with Radio Gaga, but I figured this is closer to more electronic and more like Hot Space and more dancey. And it's way up at the end. I needed something, this is second to last album, or third to last, depending on how you count. But yeah, it's just this silly little bouncy pop synthesizer tune. And you gotta know that Queen, basically starting at Hot Space, did a lot of music like that. And it was a bit of a hit. I think there's a video for it, right, as well. So there you go. That's my representation of Queen.
All right, cool. Just want to say hello to a few people. Andy he says, I got the blues. I still got the blues. I know we all waiting for summer. Yeah. Marlon Hills here. Welcome. Sketching up. Edwin Crane, welcome. Nice to see everybody here. Much appreciate you all being here. Nathan Fuller, nice to see you. All right. A wall puncher of a song, Cretan Classics. Yeah, I love that. Love that track. Okay. So I was saying we're kind of going to be talking about that, because the next band that I chose to summarize was Thin Lizzy.
Nice.
And I had to throw in a 6th category. Okay. I couldn't keep it to 5, because I mean, Phil was so diverse in everything that he did. So, but I'm going to start with the very first record, the debut, and the song "Honesty Is No Excuse." What an amazing song! I mean, that for me is an example of Phil's, very pretty melodic songs, that he would come up with once in a while. Like Sarah, "Dancing in the Moonlight," "Little Girl in Bloom," "She Knows," "Running Back." He also
I
had
named the
that.
panel book after that song. I love that. I love that song.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song. I mean, he just had that melodic sense, and you know, he was really good with that. He knew a hook, right? He knew a melodic hook, and he could put a pop tune together for sure. Um, the next one I'm gonna go with is off of Vagabonds of the Western World, and it's Rocker. He loved writing songs about being a tough guy, and having bar fights, or, being in a pub with the boys and picking up the chicks and all that kind of thing. He had a lot of songs with that sort of theme to them. I mean, other examples, Showdown, Fighting My Way Back, Boys Are Back in Town, Thunder and Lightning. It's all about, "Yeah, I'm a tough guy. I'm in the bar, get on my sickle outside, that kind of thing." So he had a few songs in that vein. Um, the next one I want to talk about is also off of Vagabonds, and this is an example of his sort of, romantic poet ballad type songs. And the song I'm going to refer to is "Songs for While I'm Away." Right, just a beautiful song. He could get really poetic and and romantic when he wanted to be. He got songs like that. "Sweet Marie" is another one. "Didn't I?" And then, of course, "Still in Love with You," which is just an epic song, especially on the uh, live record, "Live and Dangerous." Just that is an absolutely beautiful, amazing song. I mean, the guitar solos aside, the song itself is just fantastic. So had to throw that in there. The next one, I mean, what's Lizzy famous for? Off of the Fighting record, the whole twin guitar thing, right? You know, um, whether they're playing harmonies or they're trading off solos. The song Suicide is the one I picked off of that. So, it's a combination of them harmonizing, them trading off back and forth between the two of them. I mean, there's tons of examples in Lizzy's discography of having the two guitar players, whether it be, Scott and Brian, or Scott and Gary, or Scott and, John Sykes. Lots of examples of that. Wild One, Boys Are Back in Town, Emerald, Soldier of Fortune. There's a lot. I mean, that was sort of their trademark. The other type of song that he wrote a lot of, and an example I'm going to pull off of this record, Jailbreak, is Emerald. He loved writing about historical battles, or Irish history. He that was a theme that he was really, really, wrote a lot of songs about. He loved writing songs in that vein. Things like, Massacre, Soldier of Fortune, I don't know how you pronounce this, Roisin Black Rose, Genocide, Holy War. There was so many songs about battles and, that whole history, whether it be Irish or just, battle history in general. He loved doing that sort of thing. So there's a lot of songs in that regard. And the last one I got to put in here, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to do a number 6. How about just plain heavy Lizzy? Just straight up heavy rockin' tunes. Like Ballad of the Fighting Man, or sorry, Ballad of the Hard Man off of the Fighting record, or Killer on the Loose off of Chinatown, or Cold Sweat, or Thunder and Lightning, just straight up heavy rock. They did that as well. I mean, they did so many things, and they did them all so well. I mean, one of the, I mean, there's the two artists that I picked, unfortunately, are no longer with us, but man, they left some incredible music just between the two of them, Gary Moore and Thin Lizzy. I mean, you can't really top those guys. I mean, they put out some amazing music.
Sweet.
But there you
nice.
go.
Yeah, a lot of early stuff in that one for you. I'm surprised. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so my next one is ZZ Top. And the two ends of my record collection, except to ZZ Top. I'm going to start with they literally are actually.
Yeah, one end and the other.
In my heavy thing. I think I've got some ABBA. And
ABBA. I was going to say, where's ABBA?
Who else do I got? Well, years and years ago, I didn't do this with my CDs, but I just got in the habit. I set it up years ago, but my records are split up by heavy metal and non-heavy metal, essentially, right?
Oh boy.
And they've stayed that way the whole time, but my CDs are just A to Z in the end. But okay, so ZZ Top, to represent the early days, I almost, to be more representative, I should have gone with something a little more bluesy, but I just love this song so much I had to put it on here. Just Got Paid from from the second album. So yeah, to represent the early days, but really it's not that representative of the early days, because the things that would be most representative of the early days are the heavy, blues rock songs, that sound more like Foghat songs. I consider this the Brown period, right? With the two Brown albums, and Foghat has kind of a Brown period too to match up. But yeah, I think it's quite a modern song for the early days, but it's just such a drop dead classic. I had to go with that. And then kind of similar to represent the duet vocal that they did occasionally, but sometimes Billy and Dusty would do a vocal together. So I went with Heard It on the X from this album, which is kind of like It Just Got Paid. It's maybe too similar, but I love it to death. It's probably in my top 3 or 4 favorite ZZ Top songs. Just got such a great groove to it, but yeah, that's 2 that are a little faster than the usual ZZ Top, but what the heck?
Yeah, you mentioned groove. I mean, Just Got Paid their stuff the groove is just, oh man, it just takes you over. It's so good, man.
Yeah. It's kind of like a halftime groove with a sort of Teenage Eighth Notes bass guitar on it, right?
Just the pocket is just, oh my God, it's just amazing.
Yeah. And Billy's just ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, that whole riff with the ghost notes and everything. It's man, what a killer riff.
Yeah. All right, so my third one, moving into the days to represent two of my favorite ZZ Top albums, Tejas and Degueo. I'm going with Degueo, which is this album. Comes in the oversleeve like that, right? And then you take it out, and it's got this. It's got even another sleeve inside. But I went with Low Down in the Street, which to me, it's similar to Cheap Sunglasses in a way. I think it's just got this chunky, funky groove. But to me, this represents their most not really like acoustic or unplugged era, but kind of a we've taken the effects off. We're not that heavy sounding. And I think that's what you get on this album, and you get it on Tejas as well, which I love that sound. Just more intimate. Sounds like they're playing in a small bar kind of thing, like a coffee house sort of sound. Even though there's some rocky stuff on here, it's just not recorded heavy metal, right? Whereas things on certainly Fandango and Tres Hombres are recorded much more, loud rock and roll kind of thing. So I love this period of the band. Next, I went with a song that's not really a favorite off of an album that's not really a favorite. I went with Delirious off this album, which is just representative of this period, the Eliminator, Afterburner, Recycler period, where it's just very, very processed and 80s sounding. And Delirious is just not all that great a song. But we got Frank singing. I love when Frank sings. I marginally like him better. I love Billy singing as well, but Frank, it's just a really cool. I'm sorry, not Frank, Dusty. It's just a special time when Dusty sings, because Dusty, he says one of his big regrets is that he didn't sing more and he didn't do solo albums and became a singer. So he's more like I don't know, what would you say, 20%, maybe 20% of the songs he sings, something like that. But love Dusty singing. And then my last one, because I love later ZZ Top, I could have gone with something off of Mescalero. I think all those albums are great. I love
They're good, yeah.
But this is the masterpiece. This is such a heavy rock.
Oh album. God, I love that record.
Yeah, rhythming is so good. And the big unfortunate secret of this album, I keep saying it all the time, so it's not much of a secret, but it's not Frank drumming on it. It's what's his name? It's is it what is his name again? Oh, that's terrible. I forgot his name. But Joe Hardy producing. Oh, come on, what is it? Anyways, an amazing drum performance on this album. It's so I went with what did I go with? My Mind Is Gone. Later up in the track sequence, super heavy song, groovy song. Oh, I got it. You know what? I'm gonna look his name up because I just love his sound. I can't believe I'm zoning out on it, but
that's the one that's got Hairdresser on it, right?
Hairdresser's on here as
well.
God,
I love that song.
Yeah,
it's so good.
All right, I'm turning it over to you, and I'm going to the Google. I gotta look it up. So go ahead. What's your last one?
All right. Well, before I do that, we got a bunch more people that just joined us, so I'm just gonna say hello. As soon as I scroll down here, we got Dwight Bailey. Welcome, nice to see you. There's Charles Green. How are you? There's Q. How's it going? Simple Man Guitars says my top 3 ZZ Top songs would have to be Just Got Paid, I'm Bad, I'm Nationwide, and Rough Boy. Yeah. So again, these are not our favorite songs by any means. We're just trying to pick examples of everything that they did and try to bring their entire catalog and summarize it in 5 songs, which is difficult to do, but we're doing our best to do that. So there you go.
Greg Morrow's his name. Sorry.
Greg Moore. There you go.
Greg Morrow, Morrow. Yeah, he plays on Billy's solo albums as well. He plays on a fair bit of Mescalero. I'm not sure. I think what happened is on the last one, it might be all Frank again. I know these things and I forget them, and then I know them again and forget them. But the drum performance on here and the recording is incredible. The big blues song on here, Vincent Price Blues.
Yes.
The drum stuff going on, the fills with the cymbals and everything, gorgeous sounding cymbals.
That is like, of their more recent records, that by far is my favorite. And it's like the guitars, it's like heavy metal, ZZ Top. I mean, the guitars
Yeah.
are they're heavier on that than anything. Anything that they definitely anything they did in the 70s and the 80s. Forget it. And one thing I was gonna mention with ZZ Top, that ACDC show on Contrarians not too long ago, and those 70s records, we were talking about Angus Young and his tone, man. Billy's guitars sounded phenomenal on those records, right? Right off the first one, like Brown Sugar. Oh my God. Like it just, between the guitars and the groove, I mean, that stuff is just, it's sublime. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. So for my last pick, I went to familiar territory. And for me, familiar territory is, of course, Kiss. And I've got 5 songs. I mean, what they've got 20, was it 24 records they got out? Something like that in that neighborhood. Anyways, I tried to kind of, again, sort of summarize them. So the first song I'm going to pick is off their debut record. And the song I picked is
20
Deuce.
albums back. I just looked it up. 20 albums. Monster is their last. It's their 20th.
Oh, it's only okay. I'm probably including the live stuff. So yeah, so Deuce I picked off of their debut because it's in the 70s and later on, I guess they had songs that were just best way to describe it, just a big dumb riff. That's all it is. Da-na-na-na-na-na. Just a head bang. When I say dumb, I'm not saying that in a negative context, but it is dumb. Just Godzilla riff, whatever you want to call it. Just a big dumb head banging type of riff. And they did a lot of that early on. I mean, songs like Parasite, Strange Ways, She, Watching You, Cold Gin, just those big, heavy riffs. I guess they were always compared to BTO a lot in that style. BTO, there were similarities as far as the riffs in that 70s period. But yeah, that's my first one. The next one I'm going to go with is off of this record, and the song I'm going to talk about is Shout It Out Loud. Of course, they were into the big anthems, right? Shout It Out Loud, Rock and Roll All Night, Tomorrow and Tonight, a lesser known song off of Love Gun, All Night, Crazy Crazy Nights, the whole kind of sing along, we're here to party, have a good time, that kind of thing. That was definitely a part of their canon, in the 70s and 80s and future. And then, they had their period in the early 80s, where they're putting out records like Dynasty and Unmasked. And this is sort of the dark area for a lot of fans. But for me, I love this stuff. I Unmasked, I mean, I love that record. Both those records actually absolutely love. I have no issues with them at all. And that's when they were going through their pop period. So from that record, I chose Sure Know Something. It's just a really well-crafted pop song. I mean, I Was Made for Loving You off of that record. People hate it, whatever. Hey, man, it's just a really good pop song. Magic Touch off of that record. And then off of Unmasked, I mean, pretty much the whole record. Shandy, and then later on, off of Crazy Crazy Nights, Bang Bang You. These are just real pop songs. And you know what? Paul Stanley could write a pop song because these are all Paul Stanley songs. And he was the pop guy in that band. And he did it quite well, and you can't fault him for it. Next, off of Hot in the Shade, my least favorite record of theirs because it's pretty much crap. But they got the big single off of that with their ballad Forever. I mean, man, could they write ballads? It started way back on Destroyer. Beth. Who was putting out Beth in 1976? They took a big chance, and that brought that album back up from the gallows, right? It was going down, and that record brought it back up again. That song, I should say. You got Beth, and then on the next record, Paul wrote a song for Rod Stewart, and instead they decided to keep it, had Peter sing it, Hard Luck Woman, and then later on, Carnival of Souls, yet I Will Be There, Reason to Live off of Crazy Nights. They wrote their share of, power ballads, whatever you want to call them, and like every band, but they were, I think, as far as Beth, they were probably one of the first bands to do that. That wasn't done back in 1976. So they had their ballad period, and the last, can't ignore the 80s when they were trying to be a hard rock band and compete with all the Van Halens of the world at that time. They were dressing like Van Halen. They were trying to be Van Halen. They tried to get the Van Halen guitar player. They started with Mark St. John, or the Finney, and then Mark St. John, eventually Bruce. And the song I'm going to pick off of that is "I've Had Enough," Into the Fire. It's just a good 80s heavy rock song. I'm talking like those songs, on that record and Animalize. That's when Paul was trying to shatter glass, and it's a lot of ear fatigue with those. I don't mind the guitars and the songs themselves, but Paul's like, yeah, all the time up here, and it just, yeah, it's terrible. But Get All You Can Take, King of the Mountain, pretty much all of Animalize, and then Revenge as well. They did the sort of heavy kind of 80s type rockin' songs, although Revenge was a much better record than the other two I mentioned. But yeah, that was their period, trying to kind of compete, with everything that was going out there. They went from leaders to followers in the 80s for sure. So there
sweet,
you go.
Good choices. Nice.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. I'm just gonna go back and check out some of these the first song, Simple Man Guitar says, the first song I think of when I think of Kiss is probably Rock and Roll All Night or Detroit Rock City. Yeah, Detroit Rock City could be considered another anthem song, right? Party anthems. Simple Man Guitar says, do you guys like music from the Elder? It grew on me. I actually do like it now. I can honestly say that I do like music from the
patchy. It's got some good heavy songs on it. A couple that really rubbed me the wrong way. But yeah, I don't know, man. That band could have, should have. I could see them doing concept albums, doing 2 or 3 of them, and having 1 or 2 of them be absolute classics. I mean, it just seems like the concept was made for concept albums, and they just dipped their toe in it once, and it was a bad experience, and never did it again, right?
I think what was lacking from music from the Elder, and it's well documented that he wasn't happy about doing that record at all, was if they had a little bit more from Ace Frehley. I mean, if that record was done a little, in earlier instead of Unmasked, let's say, I think it would have been better, because Ace Frehley, and I've talked about this a million times, I think he was solid, and his guitar playing was great right up until Unmasked. His solos on Unmasked are phenomenal. I think they're fantastic. Paul played some of them, but the stuff that Ace did, I thought was really good. By Elder, when he's doing Dark Light, like that solo is like, it's like I don't know. To me, it sounds like so pieced together. I'm just going to play these tired riffs and string them together, and they don't go anywhere. And it's just really, it's disappointing, because at that point he was like totally out of it. Right. Like, and he didn't even want to participate in the recording of that. And you can tell it's like, he's just kind of like, here, take this and whatever. But there you go.
Ooh, nice.
But yeah. So Martin, you got anything you want to promote? Any upcoming?
Well,
I have Martin's link, by the way, is down below for his books and for Contrarians.
Yeah, I've been doing this series on the Contrarians called Reliving Old Reviews as a Useless Tool of Confusion, where we've done over 50 of those, I think now, where I just go through an old review and review the review and see if the writer got it right about some old classic album. And I started a new series there called Who Invented Heavy Metal? And we're 5 episodes into that. So it's just going to be the albums in chronological order that invented heavy metal.
Right.
I've got the audio podcast as well, History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff. I'm up to 293 episodes of that now. Like I said earlier, the latest one was about the 5 greatest songs ever written, although the very latest one is about Mac and the Mac attack, Reinhold Mac and Queen, Billy Squier, ELO, Black Sabbath Dehumanizer, and that sort of thing. And books-wise, yeah, that's all at martinpopoff.com. Nothing really new there. The last books were the 2 Genesis panel books. I've got my Sweet book is being reconstituted and slightly expanded, and that's coming out through my UK publisher in the next 3 or 4 months. And that's about it. Oh, yeah, the Judas Priest panel book is probably the most recent one, right? Judas Priest album by album. So that's it in a nutshell.
Cool. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I'm trying to get up to 5,000 subscribers. I'm about 300 and something away, so that would be much appreciated. If you want to help support the channel, I have links below. I also just released a new song. I've got about 30 songs up on iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify. Just punch in Guitar Hack, and there's all kinds of original music. I have an original song up on my channel right now. There's also a playlist of original music, and I just wrote an original song. Is Martin and I living in Toronto are in the middle of winter, so I wrote a song called Summer Breeze. Looking forward to it.
Exactly.
So check that out. So again, I want to thank everybody for coming in and being here, and we will see you all next time. Take care, everybody, and have a good rest of your week. Cheers.